With more, joining us on the line is Jim Winter. He is the founding president of the Canadian Sealers Association. Mr. Winter, thank you very much for joining us. What do you think of the seizure by the government?
Well, I think it's long overdue, Scott, that this boat's been out there running around endangering people's lives. When you start playing with a big steel boat in the ice, it's not exactly a precision weapon. You don't really know what you're going to do, and people's lives are endangered, and I'm really happy. I think everybody is in Quebec, Newfoundland, and Nova Scotia, that this boat has been seized and taken out of the situation so people can carry on without their lives being endangered.
Was this the only ship involved in this kind of activity out on the waters?
Well, as far as I know, nobody else other than Watson's people have ever threatened this kind of stuff. You may recall a number of years ago, they sat outside the harbor in St. John's threatening to ram the first ship that came through, and they were up in the Gulf threatening to ram the little wooden sealers until the RCMP boarded them that time. They had a different boat at that time. It was called the Rainbow Warrior. So they've had a history of doing these kinds of things, and sealing on the ice is dangerous enough as it is, as you well know. And to have this type of thing going on is it's just awful, absolutely awful.
Talk about that safety issue. I mean, when the sealers go out on the ice, how are they harnessed, or how are they kept on the ice? What kind of security do they have to make sure they don't end up in the water?
Skill. That's about it. When you go on the ice, depending on the ice conditions, you can be on pans that are that much bigger than your dining room table. The ocean is moving, so the ice moves. And your ability to get around and keep yourself from falling in is basically a learned skill. In Newfoundland, the word we use for it is copying. And that is basically the only safety these fellows have. And when you have a fellow with a ship running around trying to cut the ice around them, it's a very dangerous thing. And you can't really control the ship. So it's a miracle that nobody was seriously injured or killed. And I think the Canadian government needs to be commended for stopping this type of thing. It's a form of terrorism.
Strong words there. Concerning the seal hunt, environmentalists would obviously like to see this shut down. What would this do to families and sealers involved in the industry?
Well, environmentalist is not a word I'd use to describe these people. They're animal rightists, which is a wholly different thing. And the impact in Quebec, Newfoundland, and parts of Nova Scotia would be considerable. You've got to realize that a worker in an office building or a worker for CTV has a salary. Most rural peoples don't, whether they're farmers or fishermen. They earn a living from bits and pieces of things. It's sort of, think of a mosaic in your mind, a whole lot of little stones put together to make a pretty picture. Take out one stone, the cohesion is gone, the whole picture falls apart. So it's a big impact on people. And in the north, of course, for the Inuit community, it is even worse. And when the bans were put in place in Europe, the effect in the north was absolutely devastating. The effect in Newfoundland and in Quebec hurt, but not nearly to the degree that it hurt in the north.
Is the industry struggling, considering that the international campaign against it is still going?
Well, the propaganda machine has had an impact. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But you have normal fluctuations in the market, and we've had some good market conditions over the last few years. This year, the market condition is not nearly the same. However, that is not to say it's a direct impact from the propaganda put around by these groups. Unfortunately, in Europe, the propaganda has been extremely effective, and the politicians are in the back pockets of the animal rights groups, essentially. And when I have been in Europe, I talk to people in the street, not the politicians. And you would be amazed at the difference between what the politicians in Europe tell you the public believes and what the man in the street tells you what the public believes. So there is a definite impact, yes. But you have to realize that sealing is an activity that takes place through a part of the year when sealers have no other options. You can't really go fishing. You can't do this. You can't do that. The impact for them is very serious. It puts bread on the table for their families. And we, contrary to all the propaganda they spread, we utilize the animal to the best of our ability. We use fur, leather, the fat we render into omega-3 oils, and we do the same thing that abattoir workers throughout Canada, Western Europe, the United Kingdom, and the United States do. We kill animals for human beings to utilize, and there is no different except we do it outdoors in front of the cameras. And there's no way, Scott, that anybody can make animal killing look pretty. But the last time I checked, pretty had nothing to do with good, and ugly had nothing to do with bad. So we're the victims of an amazingly successful propaganda campaign.
Jim Winter, founding president of the Canadian Sealers Association, thank you very much.
My pleasure, Scott.